안녕하세요. NH-Amundi자산운용 유승우입니다. 지난번 저희 유튜브 채널에 올라온 인도 대형주 포커스 펀드에 대한 영상이 많은 관심을 받았었는데요. 그만큼 국내 투자자분들이 인도 투자에 많은 관심을 갖고 있다고 생각되어 오늘 영상을 준비해 보았습니다. 오늘 영상에서는 내년 인도 증시 전망과 현 시점에서 인도 증시는 어떤 모습을 보여주는지 집중 분석해 설명드리고자 하는데요. 오늘 영상을 위해 저 멀리 인도에서 특별한 게스트분을 모셨습니다. SBI 자산운용의 시다르타 싱님입니다.
Hello everyone. My name is Siddharth Singh. I am India Portfolio Strategist and Head of International Business. SBI Funds Management Limited is the largest and one of the oldest asset management companies in India. We are managing over $310 billion of assets. We are jointly owned by the largest bank in the country, State Bank of India, and one of the largest asset management companies in Europe, which is Amundi. Once again, we have one of the largest and most experienced and stable teams, investment teams in the country. We have about 73 member investment team in the country. The stock market, if you look at, it reflects the state of the economy. The Indian economy is in a fine fettle, and we expect it to continue to do well going forward, barring some bumps here and there. India's growth story is very well anchored by some long-term trends that we call them as force vectors, such as accelerating digitalization, growth in direct-to-consumer marketing and sales, environmental imperatives, and geopolitical rewiring of supply chains. Now, these factors have become quite extremely powerful, and especially after the COVID, and the country has leapfrogged in most of these areas. Similarly, over the medium term, if you look at India growth story, I think it is looking quite solid. So there are a couple of reasons for this. One, if you look at the balance sheets of the government, if you look at the balance sheet of the corporates and the households, these balance sheets are in a very good state. These balance sheets can be levered to pump up the growth. Similarly, if you look at the macroeconomic strength of the country, which is in the form of, say, for example, various parameters like current account deficit, reducing fiscal deficit, foreign exchange reserves are at an all-time high. The interest rate in the country is quite stable at this point in time. So all these factors, I think, the long term and the short term and the medium term, they lend a lot of credence to India growth story.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how many people are aware that India is one of the best, one of the major markets, equity markets, and also one of the best performing equity markets over the last 5, 7, 10, 15, 20 years. For example, if you had invested $10 million in Indian equity markets 20 years back, that money would have become $108 million. That means 10 times your money would have grown in the last 20 years. If the same amount was invested in the second best performing market, which is basically US, it would have only grown to about $76 million. So we as an investor, we are passionate believer in India's growth story, and we think that the market will reflect this enthusiasm a bit. There will be some corrections along the way. One should not expect linearity in growth of the economy as well as in the market. There will be many factors which are beyond India's control and mostly on the geopolitics side that can potentially delay, but I don't think that they can derail the India growth story. So as long as India can deliver on the economic front, we believe it will be reflected in the stock market performance. And if you look at the richest individuals in the world, you will find these people are investors in their own equities, in their own companies, equity investors in their own companies, or they are equity investors in some other companies. I think this phenomena of equity investing has gone down very well with Indian retail investors. Secondly, interestingly, and this is quite interesting, that India saves around $2 billion every day, but most of this saving earlier was directed towards avenues such as physical saving or towards non-capital market products. For the first time in India, retail investors have been attracted towards the Indian equity market. And what we are seeing today, that there is approximately $3 to $5 billion on a monthly basis is getting invested in equities. We think this change, this shift in behavior of investors should continue unless there is some major setback. The quantum of investments can go up and down, and this all depends on the sentiment, but the broader trend should continue. And lastly, the retail investors can actually see and feel, touch the development that is happening in the country. So the progress they can see, they are most affected by it. So as long as they see that India is growing, we have no reason to believe that they will stop investing in country's future.
Yeah.
So if you look at India's stock market, there are 6,000 companies which are listed on it. By saying that India's stock market is currently overvalued, are we saying that the entire universe of 6,000 or 6,500 stocks are expensive? This, to my mind, cannot be true, right? Therefore, looking at the aggregate number or the index and calling out the market is not appropriate, to my mind. The other thing is that even if we look at it from a top-down perspective, that is at the broad market or an index level, I think few segments of the market are looking expensive, and these few segments are in the current situation are majorly falling in the mid and the small cap area. The large caps, in our opinion, much better value for investors at this point in time. Most importantly, the valuation of the market should be looked upon in the context of the past impediments to growth, to India's growth, which I think is coming down. For example, in the past, India suffered due to high commodity prices, lack of capital, and lack of investments. Today, this is a very changed environment. If you look at commodity prices, they are quite stable despite the world fighting, right? Similarly, if you look at capital availability, it is not a problem. And more so, the cost of capital has come down for Indian companies. Look at the number of IPOs which are coming into the market. And lastly, India is investing in building its physical as well as digital infrastructure. I think these factors will go down very well for India's future. India is one of the most important markets for multinational companies such as Hyundai. If you look at Hyundai, I think 15 to 20% of their global sales is coming from India. Not only that, India is also becoming a critical partner in their supply chain network. For example, many multinational companies have their global capability centers in the country. These centers not only service their routine work, but also most importantly, they serve as their R&D centers. So as an owner of business, one would like to extract the long-term potential of the business by listing it in a market which is critical to your growth, and at the same time, the market which gives you good value for your business. So this also, in another way, this also highlights that the Indian markets are maturing quite quickly. India's rising weight in almost all major indices, it reflects India's importance today. India is very different from most other emerging markets that we talk about, not only from a rate of growth, but also from underlying factors that are contributing to that growth. For example, India is an emerging market where growth is driven by internal factors such as domestic consumption and domestic investments. These two components alone, they form approximately about 90 to 95% of our growth. So India is quite internally driven, which also means that India is not affected by the global slowdown so much. When the growth comes down, when the world growth comes down, the commodity prices tend to come down. And India, being an importer of that commodity prices, benefits a lot, right? Interestingly, India is also an exporter, but we don't export commodities like most other emerging markets. What we export is something which is very resilient to economic shocks. We export pharmaceuticals, we export IT, information technology, we export engineering goods. Now these things are quite resilient to economic shocks. During COVID period, Indian companies were sending medicines across the globe when world was shut down. Similarly, Indian IT companies were working day-night, 24/7 when the entire world was shut down, servicing your and supporting your work from home environment. So today, in that context, if you look at our IT companies, they employ over 6 million people in the sector, and they service most of the Fortune 500 companies today. Korean investors, what it means is that there is a rule-based investing in India. What it means is that there is no restriction on free flow of capital within and outside of India. India, as the largest democracy in the world, offers the rule of law. So this is quite unique from other emerging market perspective.
예. 오늘 시달달식님께서 많은 분들께서 궁금해하신 내년 인도 증시부터 지금까지 인도 증시가 어떻게 성장해왔는지 낱낱이 분석해 말씀해 주셨는데요. 어디에서도 들을 수 없는 값진 내용이었습니다. 오늘은 인도 주식시장에 대한 광범위한 이야기를 했다면 다음 영상은 인도에 어떻게 투자할 수 있을지, 어떻게 투자하면 될지 구체적으로 이야기해 보겠습니다. 감사합니다.